as the APS defendants and the defendants' lawyers want to set the record straight about the impact of this case and what actually happened in this case, and so you can get a human perspective of what these innocent individuals endured for 7 months. So we're going to be taking questions. Again, like Mr. Lawson and Mr. Secret have said, if there's a question that we think is not appropriate, we will cut you off. But we do want the defendants and their lawyers to be able to add a perspective that the world has not seen about this particular case. So we're going to start with Angelique Proctor from Fox 5, because she was so gracious to be patient and ask the first question.
Okay, who's receiving the first question?
That's up to you. Who you want to ask?
Who do you want to ask?
Well, actually, I'd like to start with Mr. Pitts.
Come on, Mr.
Because I
President.
was listening to Mr. Pitts during the sentencing, and I heard him say that he realized Mr. Salters and Christopher Waller were cheating in the courtroom is the first time he realized it. And so I'm just trying to understand, what do you concede? Cheating went on at some of your schools, but what was your role? And just sort of explain that whole paradigm to me.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm not an investigator, I'm not an enforcer, I'm an educator. As an educator, I came up through the ranks. I've always worked in inner city schools. I started in Memphis as a teacher. Went on to be assistant principal, a state evaluator, and a principal for 7 years. We put in a lot of good best practices. We worked in schools. I was asked to come to Atlanta to put those same practices in because inner city schools were performing well. We were one of the first groups to do comprehensive reform. As you know, in Houston they started, and Jerry House started in Atlanta, in Memphis. So we put the same practices in. I had tremendous gains at my school in Memphis. We gained, and we didn't do it through cheating. So it's no way that if we're implementing and impacting the same kinds of programs in the schools, we had Success for All, we had Move It Math, we had all these great programs. Mr. Waller and other people, he didn't come to my school system until 6 years later. We had already impacted school and put these programs into place. I had no way to tell you that I have a belief that inner city kids could learn. There's no way I believe somebody was cheating to get an advantage. I think people propose that we can look at data and tell whether somebody was cheating. Well, no, we didn't have the opportunity to look at erasure analysis, sheets, even some of the jurors were looking at marks and stray marks, and the erasure analysis started in '09. We didn't even get to react to it until 10. And by that time we were under investigation. So no, I didn't know somebody would be cheating children. I thought our children can do the work. And if you go and look at the subsequent scores, not the scores the year after, because there was a lot of impactful things that happened the year after. Go look at 2012, 2013, go look at NAEP. Our kids were performing. Some people decided that they wanted to augment their experience or their egos to cheat. I couldn't see who was bumping a desk, standing over a kid, doing the airplaning or whatever they call it, hovering. There's no way I could see that. I had thousands of kids. I never saw their test scores. I never saw their erasures. I mean their actual answer sheets. So I think that erasure analysis and all that could have done well and been impactful had we verified that for future reference. We would have been able to then identify flag classes, go in and know what was going on. We weren't given that opportunity. We were dealt with as if we were investigating people to cheat. I'm looking for kids to improve. That's what I do. That's what we did. We put in programs that had many kids to graduate out of Atlanta public schools. When I came to my area in the Southeast, which is basically the poorest area in the city, kids were failing everywhere. And that was acceptable. I didn't get the news cameras and people coming in and everybody interested in what was going on. That was the norm because they came from the inner city. Well, no, I wasn't going to accept that. We were going to put high quality practices. We were going to look at data. We were going to move kids the way they're supposed to do it, and we were supposed to give them the interventions that they needed. And those kids had a lot of support. We put a lot of support in those schools, and they began to improve. They got better. We had great principals. They did a lot, you know. I haven't seen one of my principals come to tell you I intimidated them. I haven't fired any principals, none. So what were they scared of? What were we intimidating on? Did anybody tell you or anybody else that I told them to cheat?
Well, what was your reaction to all the cheating that was going on?
I was just, first of all, that all word is hard for me. I know cheating went on, but there's this spectrum of cheating, and then there's those people they brought in. We hit 12 people out of thousands. We got down to 100 people out of thousands. That's less than 4%. I mean, we could talk about cheating and say everybody was cheating. Bring them. What bring them. You can't bring a small percentage of people and say everybody was cheating. I mean, that's too easy.
Can you put it in context for me? How many people do you think were cheating? I mean, what percentage of the schools? How bad was the cheating?
I can tell you how many people they brought to court and how many people they looked at, 138. I think we had 4,000, 5,000. I mean, you can count that. That doesn't seem systemic. It doesn't seem school-wide. It doesn't seem, it was pockets. And it's no way I could have determined those pockets. Had I determined those pockets, I told you before in the court, we have an OIR system. Basically, we turn it over to them. It's an internal investigation. They look into it. They didn't have the benefit of the racial analysis either, or looking at tests. They ask people whether you cheated or not. They ask people around them. They look for evidence. And we get a disposition letter. And in that disposition letter, they let us know whether they found it or not. My job is to simply, they'll send me a letter and say, we did verify. Go tell that person they need to go home. Or they'll come and say, we did not have enough evidence to verify. And that was it. I can't presume that you're guilty if our internal resolution office says you're innocent.
How do you feel about what's happened to you now?
You know, I said years ago that I wanted to impact student achievement across this country and let people know that inner city kids and poor kids can learn. Stop telling parents in inner city that their kids cannot learn. Stop talking about they're 3 and 4 years behind and you have no data to back that up. And so I thought that, you know, through God and my divine invention of what I talked to God about what I would do, that I would get that opportunity. I didn't know I would get it this way. It came, but it came a way that I didn't ask to travel. But that's not my call. But as long as we can get in front of these cameras, because you got fine educators here. The educators who were back in the schools who cheated and told everything and came and said that we made them cheat because they were scared of us and all that, they're back there teaching your kids. Be afraid, be very afraid. Because these are not the people you want in front of your kids.
What was your reaction when you heard the judge's sentence? Because it was harsher than what the DA had recommended. What was going through your mind?
Innocent people get sentenced. It's not fair. And I felt for the prisoners. I was in prison, jail. I saw people in there. I don't know who did and who didn't now. You know, I know I didn't know. How do you talk to a prisoner and say, I'm innocent, and they'll sit over there and tell you the same thing, you know, somebody's telling the truth, somebody's lying. I'm pretty sure I was telling the truth, so it's hard to even determine now, you know. So that's how I felt. I felt like it wasn't fair.
How long will you fight this? Do you have the money to fight it?
Money. I mean, I was a teacher before, an educator, so we already know what that is. But, you know, I have a great lawyer. I have a great family. We have a great support, people in America who believe in what's right, and I think they'll help us to fight this fight as long as we have it, because we're teachers, as the prisoners even said. Y'all teachers. Y'all don't have any business in here. They treated these people with dignity. They treated these ladies with dignity. Even the prisoners treat them with dignity. I did not hear one off-the-cuff word. Not one. The guards, everyone, because they know what these people do for them symbolically all of their life. Thank you.
Next question
Next
to the.
question, next person.
Ms. Evans?
Sure. Do you have to stand?
Oh, okay then.
Can you talk to us about what toll this case has taken on you?
Oh my gosh. It has been an overwhelming burden. When it first happened, I just was immobilized with the notion that not just a few people thought we hurt children, but it felt like the whole world was against us. And it was huge. So it has taken a strong emotional toll, financial, intellectual. I don't feel as smart as I used to. But spiritually, I'm stronger. So I guess when you put things in perspective, that balances things out in a really good way.
What's making you all stay together as a group? I mean, some of you, your sentences have varied wildly. Has that affected the friendships or the cohesiveness of the group at all?
So no, we, although we were in different schools and different places, I think that the public has been has some misunderstanding about that, because when we went to jail, they all thought we came from the same school, and we all knew each other, and we all conspired together, but we didn't know each other before, most of us. I think that they're the only people who understand what it means to go through this, because they're all long-term educators, 20, 15 to 30 years, and it's easy for someone to say, I understand what you're going through, and it's a different thing for someone to actually go through the same thing. And so you draw strength from people who are having the same type of experience as you are. So that's why we have, and we were able to help each other.
Let me just say, throughout the trial, we're talking the last 7 months, 8 months, the defendants, the people on trial, and the lawyers have gotten along in a way that I've never experienced in 30 years of doing this. We tried to help each other where we could. When our interests diverged, we tried to handle it in a way that didn't impact other people negatively.
And
Yeah.
you're prepared to keep fighting, you said. Tell us about that.
Oh, absolutely. There's no other way to, I mean, this is a war. So it's a matter of what's right. I think we kind of live in a world where people take shortcuts to feel better. And I think, hopefully, if there's any good from this, then it might be a message to people to stand on faith, to trust when they see there's no hope, to believe when there's no reason to believe, and to just put one foot in front of the other to move in an affirmative direction. So there's nothing more than we can do but to stand and fight.
How much money is it going to cost you to defend yourself? How much
More
has it
than
been
I
so far?
have. More than I have.
And the defense is not going to be determined by money. We're going to stick together.
Yes.
I think all the lawyers are going to stick with their clients. We're probably not going to see any more money from our clients. Our poor educators have gone through the ringer, been unemployed for years now, and the legal expenses keep piling up, but we believe in them, and we're going to stick with it. We're going to make it work.
So Jackie Patterson was telling me you always switch attorneys for an appeal, but you're saying none of you are going to abandon this case.
That's Jackie Patterson's opinion.
Yeah, I think we're all determined to stay in it. There are times when you do need to have new counsel look back and look at what trial counsel did. I don't think that's the case here. I think we all know the case better than anybody could possibly know it. And I think we are intending to stick with it and see this thing through to the end.
Sir, what are some of the grounds for appeal that you're looking at?
Those are questions that I don't think we're going to answer today.
Okay. Thank you.
There's 20,000 pages of a transcript. No one has looked at that transcript. No one has had a chance to reflect on that transcript. So it would be quite premature and probably erroneous for someone to stand here and tell you what the grounds for an appeal are.
And just to talk about money.
I would have told you, but he
is that we have a GoFundMe account that we're trying to just raise money for our appeal,
You'll mention that.
so that our lawyers will get paid.
When you hear from the district attorney's office Sunday morning, the offer is made. Do you discuss it with your attorney, your family? I mean, what goes through your mind? Did you immediately reject it outright, or did you think about it for a while?
So we were, when we got the offer, we were in shackles behind the courtroom. Our lawyers came back with us, and so there was no real time to discuss it with your family. There was time to talk about it with your lawyer. And it's so surreal because you're shackled in jail, and then your lawyer says, here's how you can get unshackled. So it's difficult because you want relief. But we couldn't. I just couldn't. When I heard the verdict for Dr. Davis Williams, I knew that it was going in a very bad direction because what Judge Baxter discussed was different from what he was giving. And Bob looked at me and said, okay, he's given 20 years, so that means you'll probably get 10. And he said, do you want me to stop it? And do you want to take the plea? What do you want to do? And I could hear his heart pounding from my seat. And I just looked down and I felt like God was like, no. And I just said no. And it was like a catalyst for, I don't know, a sense of freedom that Martin Luther King says that, this might sound kind of hokey, but that the measure of a man is not how he is when things are good, but how he is when things are tough. And Nelson Mandela says that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving in spite of fear. So, I said these things to my kids throughout the years, and I can't be a hypocrite and not be courageous and not be all the things that I told them to be. And so I just, you just suck it up and you just stand up and put one foot in front of the other and walk up to Judge Baxter knowing that he's probably going to give me 10 years, or I thought at the time that he was probably going to give me 10 years. So there's no time to discuss it with anybody but God.
You scared about going to prison?
Yeah. Yes. I don't want to go to prison, and it's not a good place. However, when we started praying, we would pray together every day in jail, several times a day, and we would sing. And we realized we kept asking God to release us, free us, and that didn't happen. And so then we started praying about helping us to endure. So sometimes the prayer isn't, God, get me out of this, it's help me to make it through this. So I'm not afraid because I know that God will be with me.
I'm afraid for her.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Evans, you said that recently you said that you wish you would have pled guilty just so it would be over with. Do you still believe that?
So what I said actually was, and I noticed that on the story, they just cut the front part of what I said off, which kind of distorted the message. What I said is, I wish I were guilty because then I could have pled and it would be over. It seems to be easier for the guilty people than it is for the innocent. And it seems as though it should be the reverse in justice, that it should be easy for the innocent and more difficult for the guilty. But I know some of the teachers at my school who actually did the cheating, because I didn't test any children, so I didn't cheat. Their records are expunged, they have their licenses back, and they're actually teaching. So it seems as though it's easier for them. So I don't wish I were guilty. So, but it would have been easier.
Do you think that people had an agenda against you? I think that's what you said recently.
Yes. I went to Dobbs and made a lot of changes. I was at a very high-performing school, and I tried to implement some of the practices that were there. There was resistance to that, and there were some practices and things that people did against children that I couldn't tolerate. So many of the state's witnesses were people who hurt children. I thought it was just quite hypocritical that, one witness was someone who choked a child, sprained a child's wrist, even before I got to the school. Another one knocked a child's tooth out. Another one called kids niggers. Another one fell asleep in class and children performed oral sex on each other. So these were the witnesses that the state brought against me. And so I thought that the jury would see them for who they were. And for whatever reason, that didn't happen. But these were people I recommended for termination, that I recommended for reprimands, people I wrote up, and they just kind of got together and retaliated.
It's kind of ironic that the trial was supposed to be about the harm that was being done to children, when the people at Dobbs who were harming the children were the people the prosecution brought in to testify as credible witnesses.
Yes.
And it was very disturbing to watch.
And harder for me because I saw what they did to children. I was in my office with their parents, the children that they harmed, apologizing for their misdeeds. And then I see the same people on the stand pretending like they're advocates for children.
Right.
It was difficult.
Ms. Davis Williams?
Oh, sorry.
Is everyone okay with him?
Yes.
Cotton.
Are you sorry you didn't take the deal, or why didn't you take the deal?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Are you sorry you didn't take the deal, and why didn't you take the deal?
Well, I would not be able to take a deal that required me to perjure myself. When you are completely innocent and you're asked to stand up and say that you're guilty, I believe that's still perjury. And I wasn't willing to compromise my integrity and say I did something that I did not do. In addition to that, I really believe in the judicial process. I hear people when they say admit responsibility, but I want to pleading guilty to RICO when I had no one to RICO with. I mean, that's the challenge for me. You must understand that. I supervised principals. I worked with them, I developed them, and not one of them was indicted. And so for me to stand up and say that I conducted RICO with no one would have been bizarre, to say the least. But more importantly, the evidence was presented, and there was none presented clearly in the case against me engaging in any acts of RICO. So I was not willing to lie and perjure myself.
Plus, let me also just say this. She was also acquitted of doing the very acts they were charging her with in this case. She was acquitted in a prior trial in September of 2013. She was found not guilty. Judge Baxter would not allow my client to assert her rights under the Fifth Amendment, the Double Jeopardy Clause, and prevent the state from trying her again. So Ms. Cotman was tried again for doing the same thing that a separate jury had found her not guilty of in September of 2013. All of the witnesses presented in this trial were the exact same witnesses that were presented in a prior trial. Judge Baxter would not allow us to mention the prior trial. He wouldn't allow us to explain to this jury that Ms. Cotman had already been acquitted. So I did want everyone to realize that Ms. Cotman was tried once, found not guilty of the exact same thing that they were charging her with in this trial.
What about the deal that was offered before the trial where folks pled to misdemeanors? Any regrets about that, or why didn't you?
She was never offered a deal before this trial. She was acquitted of everything she was accused of doing. So there was no deal because the jury had found her not guilty before this RICO trial.
Ms. Cotman, how are you feeling? How are you coping? How are you getting through the days on a more personal level?
I can tell you truly my faith, my family. This has devastated each of us financially in more words than I could ever articulate. But it has not shaken my faith. And possessions come and go. But the reality is that when you are truly innocent, there are things you're willing to stand in front of the train for. And I've done just that. And it's run me over once, but I still have ultimate faith that the truth will prevail. And I do serve a God of truth, and the truth always sets the captives free. And I'm just waiting for this process to come to completion.
What do you want the city of Atlanta to know about you that they don't know? I mean, we heard that Dr. Hall and all of these administrators were so intimidating. They put so much pressure on these people. What do you say?
I will say this. I have supervised over the last 15 years more than 200 principals. They were not called in because many of them were not willing to say what they were asked to say about me. I am a hard worker. I love children, and I do not and have not ever put the needs of children before adults. I think each of us that came to this place came here with impeccable work records, impeccable professional careers, and anyone who's ever worked with me or for me, alongside me, knows that about me, that I would never put people in compromising positions or ask them to do something unethical and harm children. And I think when you talk to people, as people begin to come out and speak about the opportunity to work alongside me, you'll hear more of that. So that's what I want people to know, that I love the children that I worked with. And my mantra always was, I work for children, I work with adults. And that's what I've practiced for 25 years. And I don't have that opportunity, but I still believe in the innate ability of all children, regardless of where they come from, their economic status, their backgrounds, that education is the great equalizer. And no matter where you start, when you get a quality education, you can absolutely go anywhere. And I will die believing that.
You asked a great question. You asked a question that I don't think has ever been answered in this case. And the state contended that Dr. Hall was this great villain who terminated principals. I don't think you ever got an answer for those of you who've been in that courtroom. I happen to know the answer. Dr. Hall non-renewed in her entire tenure at Atlanta Public Schools. She non-renewed 3 principals.
How do you feel about Dr. Hall?
Go look at the records. You know, you have a right to an open records request. She non-renewed 3 principals.
How do you feel about Dr. Hall?
I have tremendous respect for her. When I listened to her during my interview and I heard the vision that she had for the children of Atlanta, I realized that we believed the same things about children, and that we both had high expectations for children to be educated well, despite their backgrounds. I am very sad that she did not get the opportunity to see her name cleared. Like most people, I think, who have a heart. It was very sad to see the toll ultimately that this took on her life. But I have tremendous respect for her. And I can tell you she never, ever asked me or anyone else that I know of to engage in wrongdoing. In fact, she was quite the opposite. She really didn't tolerate any kind of wrongdoing that was harmful to children. And I think her record will speak for itself.
So you don't think that if not for her, this would not have happened?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
If not for her, none of this would have happened, this investigation?
I don't know that I can say that. I don't know what the original impetus was.
Ms. Coleman,
Yes.
25 years an educator.
Yes.
Say how much you love children, yet you stand here convicted of a crime which involved the hurting of children. If you had robbed a bank, at least people could say, well, she needed the money. But it's got to be, on top of the conviction, more devastating to say they're accusing me of doing something that's so against me. How does that make you feel, knowing that you've been convicted of a crime of hurting children? It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
No, it is the total opposite of who I am and what I've practiced and believed in for the last 25 years. So when I said earlier that I was shocked and stunned, I wasn't marginalizing the impact, because when you're accused of doing something really that is in stark contrast to who you are, it is shocking and devastating.
Have you thought long and hard about 7 years in prison?
I have.
And how do you process that?
You know, when you are absolutely innocent, you realize that it's not about you. There's something bigger here. And I don't know whether it's something bigger in terms of faith. I don't know if it's something bigger in terms of education reform. But I know just from this experience that innocent people can be convicted. And there is a legal process to address those times when that does occur. But I don't worry about that. I know it sounds bizarre. I really do not. I'm not afraid, because I know that eventually the truth will prevail. When that time frame comes, I don't know, but I do trust the truth. And if that's what it is, it's 7 years, then I'll walk in with my head held high and I'll walk out. A lot thinner. The food is not good. I think I lost 8 pounds already, but then that will be what it is.
Thank you.
Next person.
Davis Williams? You're looking at 7 years too. How are you going to cope with 7 years in prison if that happens?
Well, I don't plan to spend 7 years in prison. I still have faith that our justice system will work, even though it failed me this time. I just have to have faith in that. And I think that's why we have an appeal process in place, because it has failed in the past.
What do you want Atlanta to know about you? Right now, you're a convicted racketeer, an educator who cheated. You guys are saying that's not me. Who are you?
I am an educator that has dedicated more than 30 years of my life to public education. And I have a stellar record until this arrest. And why would I wait to the end of my career to compromise children that I've devoted? And education is not easy work. My days started 7 in the morning. Many times I didn't get home until 9 at night. And if I got home early, I had work until 9 or 10 at night. So why would I work that hard all of my life and dedicate myself to children and compromise myself after 30 years? That doesn't make sense.
You all have been saying that the people that were actually cheating and you testified about, a lot of them are back in schools, still teaching, still educating. Is cheating still going on in Atlanta public schools? I
haven't been there since 2011,
What do you think?
so I don't know what's going on in Atlanta public schools. But, I will tell you that I had a lot of faith in the principals that I worked with. And I respected them. And I respected the work that they were doing.
And in response to that, let me just add that there was a 2010 erasure analysis done that is proof in writing that cheating did in fact occur. And I can't recall the witness's name. I think she was from Dobbs, who admitted that she cheated in 2010 as well. So the answer to your question, and I believe Attorney Lawson has said it best, there was cheating in APS before Dr. Hall came, there was cheating while she was there, and there is cheating still going on today.
When you heard the verdict, you heard the sentence,
Mm-hmm.
What went through your mind? I mean, did you think they can't be talking about me? I mean, it's a long time.
Like I said, I think I was just numb. It was difficult to believe. I'm saying to myself, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. How could this happen? I mean, I sat through a trial. I heard everything that went on a daily basis. And it's just still hard for me to believe, with all that went on in that courtroom and everything that I heard, that we would get the verdict that we got, and certainly the sentence.
To piggyback off of something that Attorney Rubin said, my client was the first to go up to be sentenced. And I can tell all of you that there was no expectation. We had not been led to believe by the court or by the district attorney's office that any of these educators would be facing 7 years, 20 years. As a matter of fact, Judge Baxter said in open court the day before, when there was a question regarding whether or not he could even serve them, sentence them to 20 years, that nobody would be getting that. And the very next day, he changed his mind. I guess that is his prerogative. However, when my client took her seat, and as the judge continued to sentence other people, I, like Mr. Rubin, kind of slid my client the note, are you having any regrets? Because I too was willing to go to the district attorney, to go whomever and say, hold up, wait a minute. Her short answer was no. And she wrote me a very lengthy answer that I'm not willing to share at this time, but one day I'm convinced I'll be able to share her written response once she is in fact exonerated.
Ms. Davis-Williams, what are your thoughts about Judge Baxter?
We're not going to go into issues
Absolutely
about
not.
Judge Baxter.
We're not gonna do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
But you mentioned that you were led to believe he wouldn't give time. Why do you think that he did then?
Well, I was not led to believe he would not give time. My client always knew that she would be facing prison time if she left it at the discretion of Judge Baxter, and she was willing to do that. I cannot get inside of the mind of Judge Baxter to know why. I'm sure he believes that he was justified in doing what he did. Only he can answer that question. I know that there was a discussion amongst the attorneys in the court the day before that did not put any of us on notice that our clients would be facing 20 to do 7.
Thank you.
Next.
I guess Ms. Williamson? So the question that we keep hearing all over social media and radio is, why didn't they take the deal? Why didn't you take the deal, Ms. Williamson?
Well, still today, I'm innocent. I'm not going to take the deal of being accused of something I didn't do.
And the thing that I think the world needs to understand about Angela Williamson, similar to Ms. Cotman, is she's been through this 3 times. 2 times she was exonerated. So to go through this again and to go against the same evidence that you've heard 3 different ways, 3 different changes from all of these witnesses, it just proves to the strength of her character that Ms. Williamson is not going to admit something she did not do. And she just wants the world to know that.
What are your feelings going into the future? I mean, years of appeals maybe, possible prison time?
I have 2 small children. I have a daughter and a son. And I do have their future to think about. But I know my daughter told me, Mom, you're innocent. Don't stop here. For me, go on. My family has said the same. My 13 brothers and sisters have said the same. And I'm going to go on. My lawyer, who's been so very supportive of me, there was a moment where, yeah, I heard those years, and yes, it did frighten me to death, yes. And just the short moment, again, as my co-defendant has said, being handcuffed and then shackled and told at that short moment of what I had my decision to make. And yes, I was afraid. But again, what my daughter said to me, I'm going to stand strong and move forward.
When you think that you might have to leave your children at some point and actually go do your time,
And that's
what goes through your head?
extremely hard to do. But again, I must move forward.
And I think, again, what the world needs to understand about Ms. Williamson, as well as the rest of the defendants, this is about their principles. This is about the things that they went to school for, the things that they educated children about, that we're not going to give up our principles based on a sentence threat. And I think we've mischaracterized this as a plea deal. It was a sentence threat. At no point was there any negotiation, nor was it open to negotiation. And it still involved incarceration. So why would you, when you're incarcerated, facing more incarceration, give up your right to say this incarceration is unjust? That's just not right. That's not the American way. And that's why Ms. Williamson and the rest of these defendants are going to maintain their innocence, because in this system, innocent people still go to prison. You've seen examples of it. It should stop, and it's not right, it's not fair.
Ms. Williamson, for those of us who have never been to jail, just tell us what it was like.
Believe me, it was not peaches and cream as being handcuffed and shackled, being confined in a 4x4 room. It was hard. It was difficult. I mean, the freedom that I once had, I didn't have within those walls. Being very supportive of the women that I was with, we prayed daily. We gave praises to God. You know, that kept me strong. Calling my family, my husband, speaking to my husband, speaking to my children, my siblings, and just family and loved ones, that kept me strong, and definitely with the faith of God. Just, you know, it was, my son had left to go on, had gone on a field trip to Rock Eagle. And just, you know, when the verdict was given that day of me being guilty, and then handcuffed and shackled, you know, that was devastating to me. My kids were in school. I didn't have that opportunity to let them know that I wasn't, you know, coming home. If I was just given a chance a day to go home and just prepare my kids, you know, that would have been a little, you know, a little help. But I didn't get the opportunity to do that. And my son, again, you know, he was away on to Rock Eagle, and you know, was excited to see me, and I was even more thrilled to see him. But I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And you know, I just feel that just is stolen from me, and I would never ever forget that. Never ever.
And I think what, you know, a lot of you have asked, well, this is about the children. This is about harm to children. With regard to Ms. Williamson, there was no harm to children. All of her children were excellent children who excelled in her class, who excelled after her class, and who continued to excel. The evidence in her case is she had the valedictorian, the salutatorian at a local Atlanta high school. She had another student come in who was an AB student. So this is not about the children. And I would say to the district attorney who has not put his remediation program forward, it's still not about the children. What this is about is labeling educators as racketeers. And that's very, very dangerous. If you sat in the courtroom for 7 months and listened to each witness contradict themselves and contradict the other witness, you cannot believe that this happened to educators. And now they're sending educators to prison. That's just not right.
But it's interesting you say that, because this jury has been lauded as so intelligent, and they were so meticulous and watched everything, and they came back with guilty verdicts. How did this jury get this wrong?
I don't know, and that's the question for the jury. But as a person who sat in that courtroom and listened to one witness say the sky was blue and another witness say the sky was red, and we all know both of them can't be right and both of them can't be wrong, I'm not sure. When you listen to a statistical analysis where the guy can't even add, that's a problem. When you can't tell how a bubble sheet is really a bubble, that's a problem. So, I mean, when you listen to the totality of the evidence and you go back through the transcript and you read about one child saying one thing, another child saying another thing, and completely different child saying something completely different, and you come to this conclusion, I don't see how that's justice. The reasonable doubt is just what it says. It's a doubt based upon a conflict in the evidence, and it's a doubt based upon common sense and reason. Common sense and reason tells you the sky can't be red and blue at the same time.
Okay, and just in response to that question a little bit, of course, during the course of a trial, we as lawyers know, there's evidence that comes in the courtroom that you hear, and there's evidence that you don't hear. So there are many issues about what was allowed in by the judge, what was not allowed in by the judge, what juries were charged at the end of the case in terms of what the law was and what they should not have been charged, what evidence was admissible and was not admissible, and these are the broad issues of appeal that we expect that the Court of Appeals to hear. And that is one of the reasons why these persons did not want to take what was offered to them, because there are so many issues, which we won't go into today, but there are so many issues which we believe a Court of Appeals will deal with.
Ms. Williamson, your attorney just said that some of your students were highly successful and are highly successful right now. Have any of those students reached out to you in support? And if
No, I have not heard.
Actually, I've received several emails from those students, and there's been media articles by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution from those students that call for no jail time for Ms. Williamson. So the question and the answer to that question is yes, they have. And several of them came in to testify on her behalf. When it comes to Ms. Williamson's children, I can emphatically say that she did not hurt a single child.
have you felt that way, Ms. Williamson, from those students? Have you spoken to any of them?
Maybe 2 or 3 I have, former students. And again, piggybacking on what Attorney Griggs has said, they still believe in my innocence. They know I did not hurt them in any kind of way. They believe in me, and I thank them.
Can you think about one in particular that you would like to talk about?
No, we're not going to go into, especially on live TV, we're not going to name names, that'd be a problem. But what I think Ms. Williamson would like to let the public know, she's thanking everyone for the outpouring of support. This community has been divided, but they've been united on one thing, and that's educators should not go to prison. So we would like to thank the community for standing up, coming to the rally. We had 800 people come to a rally. We had 35,000 people sign petitions stating that educators should not go to prison, and I think that has not been reported. The fact that this community did not want to see educators go to prison, that's why Judge Baxter had that epiphany, because he was receiving those messages. You had Andrew Young come in and say, educators shouldn't go to prison. You had Bernice King come in and say, educators shouldn't go to prison. But yet educators are still going to prison. That's a problem.
The next person you'd like to talk to?
Can I don't want to belabor, but I thought I heard Judge Baxter say that Ms. Williamson had more evidence in the trial against her than any of these other defendants, that she was a cheater.
And what did I say in response to Judge Baxter? I said, Judge Baxter, respectfully, I've sat through this 3 times, and I've heard witnesses say it 3 different ways on 3 different days about 3 different chicken biscuits. That at no point did a witness come in and not contradict themselves, and there were actually children in Ms. Williamson's class in both two.
By Ms. Copeland? Oh, no. No, we're doing great. Come on. Okay. It's really fair for everybody to speak, because the public needs to see who you guys are.
Mm-hmm. So, ma'am, why didn't you take the plea deal?
Because I'm innocent. And as I stated before, I would not compromise my integrity for anyone.
Do you feel like you got caught up in this because, I don't know, did you know Dr. Hall? How close were you to her?
I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone here. I never met Dr. Hall except for at a convocation where we walked across the stage and I shook her hand. As far as knowing her or anyone here, I didn't know anyone. The first time I met everyone was when we went to court, and they said there were 35, and some of the 35 were, well, they took plea deals, and I still didn't know everyone until we went to jail, and then we just started talking and so forth. But as far as knowing Dr. Hall, knowing Kathy Augustine, of course I worked under Mr. Pitts, the executive director for SRT2. I didn't know him. I had seen him at maybe 2 or 3 meetings. Never had an opportunity to talk with him. Never had an opportunity to talk with anyone except for the principal at my school when we had meetings and the teachers. And I was not a teacher at Benteen. I was a testing coordinator.
How do you feel about the prospect of so many years behind bars?
I feel like if I have to do it, I'll do it. I have 1 year. And if it means that I go there, I'll do it because I'm innocent.
For the children that were promoted, that passed the CRCT who shouldn't have, that now don't have the education that they need to go on in life, what do you think should be done for them?
I can only speak for the students that were affected at Benteen. I can recall there was a 5th grade student, and as you all know, students who are in 5th grade must pass reading and math. We did have students who passed reading, but they did not pass math. So therefore, they had to go to summer school. If they did not pass math in summer school, there was an appeals meeting, which I was an chairperson as well. My responsibility as an SST chairperson was to meet with the teacher, meet with the middle school teacher, meet with the parents. If we were all in agreement that the students' work in the classroom could, if the students' work in the classroom was good enough for he or she to pass on to middle school, along with the school psychologist, he or she met with us, then if we were in full agreement, that student went to middle school. but they were also monitored through the SST process. So I don't feel like students were shortchanged at Benteen. I feel like we met the needs of them because we had strategies in which we implemented for those students who were not successful academically.
How do you feel about the justice system at this point?
Sometimes I feel like it's broken. As far as me, I know that I'm innocent, and I will have an opportunity to vindicate my name because I will be going through the appeals process.
I asked this question to Ms. Cotman. You didn't go into education for the glamour, certainly not for the money. We all know that. Yet you've been convicted of a crime to hurt children. How does that make you feel, knowing that this is what you've been convicted by a jury of doing?
Was convicted, my body as well as my mind was in a delayed process. I was shocked. I said, I came from a poor background. I attended low socioeconomic schools. So my main goal was to students in a way that will help them academically. So I really felt, I was just shocked by the entire thing. Because if I can't hurt a student, I certainly want to help them. So I would not want to hurt them academically. So I said,
what was your mind when the sentence came down?
I'll never get a chance to talk to my husband or talk to my children. I was in disbelief. I never thought that I would be proven guilty.
Next portion, do you want to talk about?
Can I just say one thing just about what you asked, because it just bothers me. When you asked, how do we feel about the children who haven't been educated because people cheated for them? Okay, so that question has a lot of assumptions. I think there's a misconception about the CRCT score and how much power it has over the ability of a child to get the services they need in school. You're given a test at the end of the school year. It's in April. The results don't come back until May, so the school year is over. You don't provide services to students based on a CRCT score. At the beginning of the year, all students are given a diagnostic assessment, and throughout the year, and this is actually in evidence. I told Bob, I said, I wish I could do a website and just post all the things we do, but he told me I couldn't do it, so I'll have to tell you instead. We gave diagnostic assessments, and then we assess them as they learn, and we remediate based on what they've been able to master. So we'll say at Dobbs, for example, we had before school tutorial, we had after school tutorial, we had a Saturday school, I wrote a $1 million grant. Well, me and the leadership team wrote a $1 million grant for a summer academy. I had a GED program for parents. We had something called extended learning time during the day where students were grouped together based on the areas of deficiency so that we can provide assistance for those particular students. I use EIP money to reduce the classroom size. So instead of a regular classroom would be maybe 28 students, we reduced it down to about 15 so that teachers could individualize the support that they gave to students. So the CRCT scores, and then one of the jurors, when we first had that first jury pool of us, about 600, one of them came in, it was a guy who had his daughter was special education, and he was reduced to tears, and he said, I'm just upset that students who needed to be in special education weren't because these people cheated. So being in special education is not dictated by a CRCT score. You're given a psychological examination. You're given a multitude of diagnostic assessments. And so I think and maybe not at the fault of the media, so I'm not going to blame you, but I am kind of sort of going to blame you, that the misinformation that people are getting. I mean, there seems to be this drive to make a causal relationship between a second grade teacher cheating on a child, giving a child an answer, and that child not being able to read in high school. There's a lot of time in between that, and there's a lot of support and services in between that, and there's a lot of accountability on the part of all of us, the community, the schools, parents, and we all work together in order to make sure children are supported. We did so many I did more interventions at Dobbs than I ever did at Inman, and that I think is the hardest part for me pill to swallow, is that there's a perception that we shortchange children some way because their score was high. A score is one day in one child's life, one snapshot, and it does not dictate the type of help and support that they get. Children got support all the time. And if you can email me and I'll send you the things that we did at Dobbs. So yeah, that's a misconception.
What are you going to do for a living before you, as you're waiting for your appeal?
What am I going to do for a living?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm not sure if, I don't know.
Did you say before that you had applied for 100 jobs and hadn't gotten any of them?
Yes. So I applied. I told Judge Baxter that, I went to good colleges, as we all, if you just knew the background of the people here. But I got a PhD from Mercer University, I had a 3.9 grade point average. Got my leadership certification from University of Georgia, a 4.0. I went to University of Pittsburgh for education, 3.85. I have always been promoted. When I was a guidance counselor, I was a guidance counselor of the year for the whole district. I'm not saying that to brag, I'm telling you that, and I'm sure that all these people can line up and tell you the accolades that they received over the years for what they did for kids. But I applied for, yes, about 100 jobs and did not get any of them. And I know that when you see our names, you Google them, we're like the America's Most Wanted. And it is so hard to overcome that type of, the barrage of misinformation about who we are, to just get someone to say, maybe, possibly I'll give this person a chance. So yeah, I hope that I can find employment, but I'm not sure. No, I never tested in these children. That's I'm an administrator, and so I didn't test children, so no, I didn't cheat. And that's another thing. I'm glad you asked that, because when you see the news stories, it says Dana Evans convicted of cheating. It's so misleading. I didn't test not one child in my school. I didn't cheat. I didn't change answers. I didn't erase answers, and that's not even what we were charged with, many of us. I'm here because 3 teachers at my school confessed to cheating. 3 teachers. And I should have known. And I should have stopped it. But if I did know, I would have stopped it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to respond to that.
How many teachers were, you have 3 teachers, but how many total were?
In my whole school, I had about 100 people that I supervised, are either part-time or full-time. There were probably about 58 to 60 teachers, so 3. The interesting part, and Bob left, and so I'm sure he's going to, so I could talk more. But I'll just say this. Logically, it didn't make sense when you think about Dobbs. There were 3 teachers in 1 grade level, 4th grade. We had no flags in 5th grade. We had no flags in 3rd grade. 3rd and 5th grade are the gateway years. Those are the grades that students have to pass the test in order to be promoted. But there were no cheaters in 3rd and 5th grade. Well, they were only in 4th grade. If I were, as a principal, conspiring to cheat, logically, I would pick 3rd and 5th grade to cheat with. It didn't even, most of the things that they presented did not make logical sense for administrators to be involved in it. It was a few people who made very bad choices. And I said this to Bob Wilson, and I said this to Mike Bowers. I think it had to do with people not believing in themselves or children. I don't think that the teachers who cheated were horrible people who don't ever need to get another opportunity to redeem themselves. I think it was misguided people who just make bad choices.
Thank you.
But, sorry.
So, Ms. Buckner-Webb, when you heard those sentences coming down, what goes through your mind? 7 years for the top 3. And he had already said everybody's getting prison. So what are your emotions?
I became very nervous, and I was thinking that I would possibly get at least 5 years. And but I just had to kind of suck it up and see what the judge was going to sentence me to.
Any regrets about not taking the deal?
No, I have no regrets about taking the deal.
Why did you take the deal?
Because I'm innocent. I didn't take the deal because I'm innocent. I didn't cheat. I'm not a racketeer, so.
But you might be going to prison.
It's possible that I might be going to prison.
What are your thoughts when you think about I might be going to prison?
Well, I hope that I'm getting a second chance with the justice system, and I hope it prevails, and I won't have to go to prison. So that's my thought.
Did you have any time to consider the deal? Would it have made a difference if you had time? How was it presented to you?
I had a little time to consider the deal, just as Dr. Evans stated that we were in the back, and my attorney came to me and presented the deal, and I only had a few moments to think about, should I take the deal or should I just consider to go on? So I didn't have much time.
Any thought to taking it, or were you just adamant saying, you know what, I'm innocent, I'm going to move forward?
That's pretty much it. I was, thinking I'm innocent and I'm going to move forward.
Did any of you consider taking the deal, even like for a couple of minutes? No.
If I can just kind of add something to what Diana said, because she's my client, but at the end of the day, I can advise her as to what she should do, but it's really her decision. And I will tell you that what she indicated then is what she's held on to up to this point. That it's easy, right? It's easy to go ahead and say, I'm going to say this because it gets me out of possibly going to prison. But it's not that easy. And what Diane said to me is that I'm not going to sell my soul and say something that's not true so I can walk out of here. It's a difficult thing to do, ladies and gentlemen. It's a difficult thing to do, but she did it. She did it, and I'm proud of her for doing it. There are a lot of people who may not have, but she did. And it would have been difficult to stand up there and read from a script that would have been provided by the district attorney, because they wanted her to say it in a certain way. They had their words. You've got to say this, and by the way, you've got to say you're not going to appeal, right? And she was not willing to do that.
So what were you thinking when you heard two co-defendants, after saying they were innocent, stand up and say, okay, I'm guilty? Mr. Bullock,
Cleveland.
Well, I wasn't really thinking anything, because that's something they chose to do. So.
And I would just like to add, in response to the previous question, that there's been some what I call negative press about the attorneys who dedicated 7 months of their time, 2 years, some of them 4 years, from our colleagues, from our peers, whom suggest that we were crazy for not encouraging our clients to take recommended sentences. And what I'd like for the world at large to know is that when you are a criminal defense attorney, you stand for something. We did not give up 8 months, I say 8 months, of our lives to get to the end to shortchange our clients. We made our clients aware of what their options were, and they made an informed decision. It is not our role as defense attorneys to place pressure on clients to take deals that we know are not in their best interest, especially a deal that would have required them to waive a constitutional right. All of these people are parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, wives. I think it's an overstatement to suggest that they did not give some thought and some consideration to taking the deal. They're thinking about, I've got a husband, but I want to see my grandchildren grow up. 7 years to be deprived of that. So of course that is running through their mind. And I think that that says even more about the people you see sitting behind you, that they were willing to sacrifice that. And I would ask, how many out there viewing us right now or standing in this room would make that same decision?
It's I'm glad you said that. And there have been a lot of reporters, right, who have asked the question, why did you not take the deal? That's probably been the first question from everyone, right? And that's not where the discussion should be, should it? Because these are educated people who've been convicted, true. So the appropriate question is, what is the appropriate sentence? Even if you believe in your heart of hearts that they committed the crimes that they were convicted of, what is the appropriate sentence? All right? Diane was charged, they said that she erased answers on a test and put in the right answers. For second graders, where the tests don't count towards targets, They don't count toward AYP. They don't count toward bonuses. She never got a bonus, never got a penny. Her school did not meet targets. Her school did not receive something that they were supposed to receive. There was, even if you believe she committed the offense, there was no effect whatsoever on anything in the Atlanta public school system. And so she's been convicted. So based on that, ladies and gentlemen, what is the appropriate sentence? Huh? Prison? Prison is not appropriate for any of these individuals based on what they have been convicted of. None of them. And that's where the discussion needs to be. Not whether they should have taken the deal, right? But what's appropriate? And what has happened in this case has been tremendously unfair. And I will tell you that it's not been appropriate. And it's not 7 or 2 or 1. None of those years is appropriate for any of these educators under any set of circumstances. 0.
Folks, I think that's the last person that we had talked about. You know, all of the lawyers and all of those persons who accused would like to thank you for coming to hear their story. There are obviously some questions that we thought this August body would have asked that were not asked. Specifically, that question I think that should be in all of your minds is, how do we get here? Why these 12? Why these 12? The state presented an expert witness whose name I don't recall. Chezik, is that his name? Cizik, who said that in every school district there will probably be 5% of the educators, teachers in a school district who will cheat. The numbers in the Atlanta public school system, and he said it was about 5%. In the Atlanta school district, there were, in 2009, there were 3,550 certified educators. The numbers was like 4.7%. He also said something that was pretty interesting. He said, of those 5%, you're going to have inclusive in that body a number of innocent educators who got swept up in the whole process. This is not George Lawson. This is the state's expert. I would suggest to you that that is what happened. That is what happened. The other question that I was surprised that none of you asked was, if you look at the erasure analysis for the state of Georgia for 2009, look at the school districts that were involved. I don't see a news conference where there were convicted educators from those school districts. If you want to talk to somebody who can probably tell you the answers to some of the better questions, why don't you drive down to Albany, Georgia, and have a conversation with the district attorney in Albany, Georgia, which was alleged to have been the second highest school district with erasures, and ask him what his honest opinion was about the erasure analysis and the allegations of cheating in his school district. That district attorney did not indict anyone. He left that up to the processes of the PSC, and it was of the opinion that no educator in his county was going to be indicted and charged with cheating. We don't talk about comparative situations all the time, but we don't have to look outside the state of Georgia. And if you look outside the state of Georgia, you will see the same kind of results. Just go down to Albany, Georgia, and have a candid conversation with the district attorney there. Not going to throw Judge Baxter under the bus, as we've talked about that all the time. You heard what happened, you saw what happened. But I think, we have a district attorney who said that he had no intentions of sending individuals to jail, but we ended up there. Thank you all for coming. We hope that you have a different insight on the educators. Hopefully you have a reasonable insight on the lawyers who were involved in this case, and that at some point in time that you will see the value of what these educators did. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.